Take a look at solving for segment lengths when we have intersecting secant chords and tangents. Now these problems are specifically going to focus when we have an x squared, meaning we are going to have to factor. So we know that when two chords intersect inside of a circle, that we take the one portion, we multiply it by the other portion, and we set it equal to that portion times that portion, right? So if I go ahead and set this up, I have x plus 6 times x minus 1 equals 12 times 10. Okay, so I go ahead and I distribute on this side, right? So I have my x times x, which is x squared. X times negative 1, it's negative x. I have 6 times x, which is positive 6x, and 6 times negative 1, which is negative 6. And then I have, bless you, buddy. Then I have 12 times 10, which is 120. All right, start combining like terms. I get x squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 120. I subtract 120. I subtract 120. All right, so once I see this, I know that I'm going to be solving by factoring. Okay, so I have to set the whole entire thing equal to 0. So I get x squared minus 5x minus 126 equals 0. Okay, now I'm going to factor. And how I like to factor is I make my x, right? And in the top part of the x, I put the b term. So we have ax squared plus bx plus c. So I put the b term, which is negative 5. Right? I then put, I'm sorry, positive 5, positive 5, positive 5, positive 5. And then put down here, I put my c term, which is negative 126. So now I have to find two numbers that add to that also multiply. Okay? So because this number's positive, the larger of the two numbers have to be positive. Because that one's negative, one of them has to be negative. Now there's no trick. There's no real trick. I don't use a trick. I just go through and I start. Sometimes I'll start at 1, sometimes I'll start at 2. You know, doesn't really. But I got to figure out what two numbers, right? So I get to 14 and 9, right? Positive 14 times negative 9 gives me negative 126. And positive 14 minus 9 gives me positive 5, right? So then I set it up as x plus 14 times x minus 9. Now I have to solve. So I set each one of these equal to 0. Right? I subtract 14, I subtract 14. I get x equals negative 14. I add 9, I get x equals 9. Since we're dealing in this, we only need positive numbers, so x equals 9. Okay? All right, let's look at another example. Now we have two secants that intersect outside the circle. When this happens, we take the outside number right here, and we multiply it by the whole length. We take the outside length and multiply it by the whole length, right? So we're going to have the outside, which is x, times 5 plus x equals the outside length 4 times the whole length, which is 4 plus 2. Okay? So I distribute here. I'm left with 5x plus x squared equals 4 plus 2 is 6. Right? So I got 5x plus x squared equals 24. Right? Because I have the square right there, I want to set this equal to 0. So I subtract 24, subtract 24. I'm going to rewrite it into x squared plus 5x minus 24. Okay? And that's going to be equal to 0. Now, I have to find two numbers that add up to positive 5 and multiply to negative 24. So I go through and I get positive 8, negative 3. Right? So I have x plus 8 times x minus 3 right? Set each equal to 0. So I subtract 8, I get x equals negative 8. I'm not going to be using that one. I add 3, I get x equals 3. There's our answer right there. Let's continue to look. We've already done one like that. So let's look at number 16. Number 16, we have a tangent line intersecting a secant outside the circle. And for this, remember, we take the secant length and we square it, and we set it equal to the outside length times the whole length. So we're going to have x plus 5 squared equals 12 times 12 plus 15, right? So it's going to be x plus 5 times x plus 5 equals 12 times 27, okay? We go ahead and we distribute on this one, or there's some people like to call it foiling, right? So I have x times x, which is x squared. I have x times positive 5, which is positive 5x. I have 5 times x, which is positive 5x. I have 5 times 5, which is positive 25. 12 times 27 is 324. I combine like terms. I have x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 324. I subtract 324. I subtract 324. I have x squared plus 10x minus 299 equals 0. Right, so I'm going to have to find two numbers that add up to positive 10 and multiply to negative 299. I'll save you guys the suspense. We have positive 23 and negative 13. Right? So I set it up as x plus 23 times x minus 13. I solve for each of these. Minus 23, x equals negative 23. That's not going to be it. X minus 13 equals 0. Plus 13, plus 13. X equals 13. All right, I hope this helps with the homework. Any questions, let me know.